Glial cells support and enhance neural activity. Glial cells or glue were originally thought of holding the nervous system together, but have a bigger purpose. They play a big role in communicating with other neurons, and they affect neural functioning in the brain. There are just as many glial cells, if not more, as there are neurons. There are 4 basic types of glial cells. 3 of them are found in the brain. Astrocytes are star-shaped glial cells with numerous processes that run in all directions. They can regulate blood flow, receive synapses from other neurons, and astrocytes also constitute a tripartite synapse, which is 3 parts. A microglial cell is an extremely small glial cell that removes cellular debris from injured or dead cells. They are very active, and they report to a damaged area and surround the injury. They could be called as like the brain's cleanup crew. And they are also a key component to neural pain systems. Oligodendrocytes are a type of glial cell that forms myelin in the central nervous system. Schwann cells are the glial cell that forms myelin in the peripheral nervous system. Both of these cells include myelination, which is the process of myelin formation. Myelin is the fatty insulation around an axon, formed by glial cells that improve the speed of conduction of action potentials. Now, there are the nodes of Ranvier, which is a gap between successive segments of the myelin sheath where the axon membrane is exposed. Going back to Schwann cells do the unsheathing of a single axon each time. While short axons lack myelin, they are still surrounded by oligodendrocytes or Schwann cells. Oligodendrocytes provide chemical signals that enhance the structural integrity of axons. In the brain, glial cells are broken down by percentages of what is contained. 75% are oligodendrocytes, 17% are astrocytes, and 7% are microglial cells. Glial cells divide throughout an entire lifespan. With this division, they could form possible brain tumors. Some glial cells or astrocytes respond by changing size. Edema, the swelling of tissue, such as in the brain in response to injury, also influence local brain chemistry, which is involved in changes in neuronal excitability, which is very related to epilepsy. Multiple sclerosis is a disorder characterized by widespread degeneration of myelin. Now getting into the gross neuroanatomy, which is anatomical features of the nervous system that are apparent to the naked eye. The natural subdivisions of the nervous system are the peripheral nervous system, which is the portion of the nervous system that includes all the nerves and neurons outside the brain and spinal cord. And then the central nervous system, which is the portion of the nervous system that includes the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system, or PNS, consists of nerves, which are a collection of axons bundled together outside the CNS. Motor neurons are nerves that convey neural activity to muscle tissue and causes it to contract. Sensory nerves are nerves that convey sensory information from the PNS to the CNS. Now, the PNS has 2 distinct divisions. The somatic nervous system, which is the part of the peripheral nervous system that provides neural connections to the skeletal musculature. Autonomic nervous system is a part of the peripheral nervous system that provides neural connections to glands and smooth muscles and internal organs. The somatic system. The somatic nervous system makes up of cranial nerves, which are nerves that are connected directly to the brain, and spinal nerves, nerves that emerge from the spinal cord. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, 1 left and 1 right. 3 cranial nerves that are sensory pathways to the brain are olfactory nerves, optic nerves, and vestibulocochlear nerves. There are 5 pairs of cranial nerves that are motor pathways: the oculomotor, the trochlear, the abducens, spinal accessory nerves, and hypoglossal nerves. And now these pairs of nerves have both sensory and motor pathways: trigeminal, facial, glossopharyngeal, and vagus. Now we break into two differential roots of spinal nerves. There are dorsal roots, which are a branch of a spinal nerve that carries sensory info from the peripheral nervous system to the spinal cord, and ventral roots, which is a branch of a spinal nerve that carries motor messages from the spinal cord to the peripheral nervous system. Each spinal cord is named based on the location of the segment on the spinal cord. There are 8 cervical, which is the topmost 8 segments of the spinal cord neck region, 12 thoracic, which is the 12 spinal segments below the cervical neck portion of the spinal cord, corresponding to the chest, 5 lumbar, the 5 spinal segments that make up the upper part of the lower back, 5 sacral, where are the 5 spinal segments that make up the lower part of the lower back, and then 1 coccygeal, which is referring to the lowest spinal vertebra. The autonomic nervous system. The main system for controlling the organs of the body are the autonomic ganglia, which are a collection of nerve cell bodies belonging to the autonomic division of the peripheral nervous system that are found in various locations and innervate the major organs. Autonomic neurons within the CNS send their axons and innervate all major organs. Preganglionic, which is referring to the neurons in the autonomic nervous system that run from the central nervous system to the autonomic ganglia. And then the postganglionic is referring to the neurons in the autonomic nervous system that run from the autonomic ganglia to various targets in the body. Now, the autonomic system has 3 major subdivisions. There is the sympathetic nervous system, which is a component of the autonomic nervous system that arises from the thoracic and lumbar spinal cord. Part of the sympathetic nervous system is the sympathetic chain, a change of ganglia that runs along each side of the spinal column. The second part of the autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is a component of the autonomic nervous system that arises from both the cranial nerves and the sacral spinal cord. The sympathetic nervous system uses norepinephrine, which tends to accelerate activity, and the parasympathetic system uses acetylcholine, which slows down activity. The third and final part of the autonomic nervous system is the enteric nervous system, which is an extensive mesh-like system of neurons that governs the functioning of the gut. The brain weighs about 3 pounds, which is equivalent to 1,400 grams. Now, the brain is separated into 2 cerebral hemispheres, the right and the left halves of the forebrain. In figure 2.12 right here shows 3 different views of both hemispheres. The cerebral cortex, the outer covering of the cerebral hemispheres that consists largely of neuronal cell bodies and their branches. The gyrus is a rigid or raised portion of the convoluted brain surface, and sulcus is a furrow of a convoluted brain surface. There are 4 major cortical regions in the brain: the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the most anterior portion of the cerebral cortex. The parietal lobe is a large region of the cortex lying between the frontal and occipital lobes of each cerebral hemispheres. Temporal lobe is the large lateral cortical region of each cerebral hemisphere, continuous with the parietal lobe posteriorly and separated from the frontal lobe by the Sylvian fissure. Occipital lobe, which is a large region of cortex covering much of the posterior part of each cerebral hemisphere. There are 2 types of gyri that are defined by location in the brain. Postcentral gyrus is the strip of parietal cortex just behind the central sulcus that receives somatosensory information from the body. And the precentral gyrus is the strip of frontal cortex just in front of the central sulcus that is crucial for motor control. With an undamaged brain, the four cortical lobes of each hemisphere are continually communicating within themselves. This involves the corpus callosum, which is the main band of axons that connects the two cerebral hemispheres, allowing them to communicate. During dissections of the brain, when the brain is sliced, there are two distinct shades of color. There are gray matter, which is areas of the brain that are dominated by cell bodies and are devoted to myelin, and white matter, which is pale-colored layer underneath the cortex that consists largely of axons with white myelin sheaths.